A woman is free tonight after spending part of the weekend in jail for an unusual and painful crime.
Meet Bonita Linva. She tracked down the predator who harmed her son and ensured justice was served. When it comes to protecting their children, some mothers will stop at nothing. Today we explore 5 fearless moms who took revenge on child predators, showing the lengths a parent will go to safeguard their loved ones. Number 5. Miriam Rodriguez. Miriam Rodriguez was a courageous human rights activist in Mexico, facing off against the ruthless Zeta cartel. Her life took a tragic turn on January 23, 2014, when her 20-year-old daughter, Karen Alejandra Salinas Rodriguez, was kidnapped by cartel members in San Fernando. These criminals are often kidnapped for ransom to fund their dark operations. During this terrifying time, Miriam spoke to the kidnappers, her voice filled with desperation as she pleaded for her daughter's release. The kidnappers' response over crackling walkie-talkies was chilling. They claimed they didn't have Karen but offered to help search for a fee of $2,000. Miriam paid, clinging to a sliver of hope, but the kidnappers soon vanished, no longer answering her calls. Then new voices demanded an additional $1,500, claiming they had Karen. With heavy hearts, her family paid again, though hope was fading fast. The devastating truth eventually surfaced. Karen had been murdered. Local authorities, crippled by corruption and fear of the cartels, were of little help. But Miriam, fueled by a mother's grief and rage, vowed to track down the perpetrators herself. She transformed her appearance, cutting and dyeing her hair red and adopting disguises to collect information unnoticed. She infiltrated the criminal underworld, pretending to conduct polls or blending in with the gangs. Her relentless quest led to a grim discovery, a hidden grave holding the remains of her beloved Karen. The culprits were indeed members of the Zetas. Overcome with grief yet driven by fierce determination, Miriam meticulously gathered evidence of her daughter's killers. She identified them, monitored their movements, and supplied vital information to the authorities. Her efforts led to the capture and imprisonment of several cartel members, some of whom abandoned their criminal pasts to seek redemption. Tragically, Miriam's story ended in violence. On Mother's Day in 2017, she was gunned down outside her home, suspected to be the work of the same cartel she had courageously challenged. Her death caused an uproar across the nation and among global human rights groups, criticizing the government's failure to protect her despite her high-profile fight against cartel violence. Miriam Rodriguez's legacy is a haunting reminder of the dangers faced by those who dare to confront evil. Number 4. Marianne Bachmeier. Marianne Bachmeier, often dubbed the Revenge Mother, took justice into her own hands in a gripping tale that shook Germany in the early 1980s. It all started on March 5, 1980, when 7-year-old Anna Bachmeier decided to skip school after a spat with her mother. She visited a neighbor's house, drawn by the allure of playing with his cats. This neighbor, Klaus Grabowski, a 35-year-old butcher with a shady past filled with allegations of abuse, had darker plans. In a chilling turn of events, he abducted Anna, imprisoning her in his grim basement. The horror escalated when he strangled her with a pair of his fiancé's pantyhose, later concealing her lifeless body in a cardboard box and abandoning it by a canal. The discovery of Anna's body triggered a swift arrest of Grabowski that very evening, thanks to a tip from his own fiancée. At his trial, Grabowski's defense was equally appalling. He claimed Anna had attempted to blackmail him, threatening to expose his alleged molestation to her mother. This defense, alongside his history of undergoing hormone treatments to curb his sexual impulses, ignited a fury within Marianne Bachmeier. The tension in the courtroom was palpable on March 6, 1981, during the third day of Grabowski's trial. Marianne, driven by a tempest of grief and rage, had smuggled a .22 caliber Beretta into the courtroom. As Grabowski made his entrance, she rose from her seat, drew her weapon, and unleashed a storm of bullets, landing 6 shots. Grabowski was dead before he hit the floor. According to witnesses, her words echoed in the stunned silence that followed, "I wanted to kill him." Marianne's drastic act of vigilante justice ignited a fiery debate across Germany. Many empathized with her, seeing her as a shattered mother who took matters into her own hands when the system seemed too slow, too cold. Yet others condemned her, arguing that no matter what the motive, taking the law into one's own hands could only erode the foundations of legal order. The legal repercussions for Marianne were severe, yet somewhat tempered by public sympathy. Initially charged with murder, her sentence was later reduced to manslaughter. In 1983, she received a 6-year sentence, but the gates of the prison opened for her just 3 years later. Her case lingered in the public eye, a constant reminder of the tangled lines between justice and revenge. and the profound pain borne by victims' families. After her release, Marianne sought solace far from Germany, wandering from Nigeria to Sicily, each place a brief home where she perhaps searched for peace. Eventually, her journey circled back to Germany when a grim diagnosis of pancreatic cancer anchored her travels. Marianne Bachmeier passed away in 1996 at the age of 46, leaving behind a legacy wrapped in controversy and sorrow. She was laid to rest beside her daughter Anna in the quiet earth of Lubeck, where both their stories found a silent end. In this tale of tragedy and vengeance, the echoes of that faithful day continue to resonate, a stark reminder of the delicate balance between justice and retribution, and the indelible mark of a mother's love turned into a specter of death. Number 3. Sarah Sands. Sarah Sands, a determined mother from East London, found herself at the center of a harrowing situation. Her neighbor, Michael Pleasted, wasn't just any resident. He was a known predator with a dark past of sex offenses. As a mother, Sarah's protective instincts kicked into high gear when she discovered that Pleasted had harmed her son Bradley. The backdrop of this disturbing revelation was Pleasted's history. Despite being a convicted pedophile, he was out on bail. This detail only fueled Sarah's resolve to confront him. One chilling evening in November 2014, armed with nothing but a kitchen knife and a heart full of fury, she made her way to Pleasted's apartment. What transpired there was both tragic and violent. Sarah's original plan was simple yet fraught with emotion. She intended to force Pleasted to confess his vile acts, aiming to spare her son the trauma of testifying in court. However, the intensity of the moment overwhelmed her, and the confrontation spiraled out of control. In a rapid succession of events, Pleasted was fatally stabbed 8 times. After the incident, Sarah didn't run. Instead, she did something that many found surprising. She turned herself into the police. During her confession, she was fraught with remorse, but unwavering in her protective instinct. Her subsequent trial in 2015 was a complex affair that stirred public emotions. She was convicted not of murder, but of manslaughter due to a loss of control, and sentenced to 7 years in prison, a term that was later reduced to 3.5 years in light of her circumstances as a single mother. Sarah spent almost 4 years behind bars, a time she used to reflect on the magnitude of her actions. Upon her release, she spoke candidly about the ordeal. While she regretted the violence that had occurred, she remained steadfast in her belief that her actions had protected her son and prevented Pleasted from harming others. Number 2. Bonita Linva. Bonita Linva, a mother from Franklin, Indiana, took shocking measures against her daughter's boyfriend, suspecting him of the unthinkable, a crime against her 2-year-old son. On a chilling December night in 2013, Vela, influenced by marijuana and possibly other substances, and her 2 friends cornered the 18-year-old in a trailer. Over a harrowing 3.5 hours, they held him captive, with Vela unleashing terrifying threats. In an extreme act driven by her suspicions, Vela used a box cutter in an attempt to permanently mark him as a reminder of his alleged deeds. Vela's anger boiled over under the influence of drugs, clouding her judgment. Despite the boyfriend's denials, Vela was relentless. She chillingly offered him a deal, his life for a scar. The scene escalated quickly. Initially, she attempted to stab him with a fork, but ultimately she turned to a box cutter. After inflicting the wound, Vela released the young man, who staggered away to seek medical help and report the ordeal to the police. The aftermath was swift and severe. Vela was arrested and faced charges of battery with a deadly weapon and criminal confinement with a deadly weapon. Set at $28,000, her bond mirrored the gravity of her actions. Throughout, the victim insisted on his innocence regarding the accusations laid against him by Vela. As the investigation unfolded, Vela confessed to the police that her actions were fueled by drug-induced paranoia, admitting her judgment might have been clouded at the moment. This incident left the community in shock, grappling with the stark reminder of how quickly suspicion can turn into violence, especially when fueled by substance abuse. It's a terrifying thought, both the action itself and the circumstances leading up to it, compounded by the fact that the violence unfolded under the watchful eyes of Vela's accomplices, who did nothing to stop it. Number 1. Lupe Marcado. Parents go to great lengths to protect their children. It's a fact we all understand. But what happens when those lengths involve crossing the darkest of lines? This was the grim scenario for Lupe Marcado and Barry Gilton, a couple pushed to the brink by a chilling threat. In the heart of San Francisco, their 17-year-old daughter fell under the clutches of Calvin Sneed, a member of the notorious Central Divisadero Players gang. Sneed wasn't just a gang member, he was exploiting their daughter most horrifyingly, forcing her into prostitution. The parents' nightmare had turned into a stark reality, and their pleas for their daughter to break away from Sneed's hold were in vain. Driven by desperation and the failure of legal avenues, Marcado and Gilton took a path from which there was no return. They started tracking Sneed, learning his habits and movements, setting the stage for a dire confrontation. On June 4, 2012, the couple found Sneed driving through the city. The scene that unfolded was as dramatic as it was tragic. They shot at his car, causing a crash that ended his life. The aftermath was as murky as the motives behind their actions. Marcado and Gilton were arrested, charged with murder, and thrust into the whirlwind of media scrutiny. Their story rippled through the community, igniting a fierce debate over the boundaries of parental protection and vigilante justice. Some saw them as protectors, driven to the edge by a system that let them down. Others viewed their actions as a dangerous precedent, a step too far, regardless of the circumstances. As the court case unfolded, it became a touchstone for discussions on justice, the reach of parental love, and the profound dilemmas faced when the law fell short. This tragic tale leaves us pondering a haunting question. When the stakes are this high, what would you do to protect your own? It's a scenario that chills to the bone, reflecting the darkest sides of human nature and the unpredictable ways we might react when watching from above, unseen as the story unfolds below.